This is the thesis presentation for Lori Benner and Melissa Tatman. This is our collaborative capstone project due May 6, 2016.
Here's our sign-in sheet because our friends are too shy to be on camera who have attended today.
We shall begin with the problem. Students who are not reading at grade level by third grade are 4 times less likely to graduate high school by age 19 than are children who are reading proficiently by that time.
A strong foundation in reading is imperative for students as they embark on their educational voyage. Third grade students who do not have proficient reading ability before entering 4th grade lack the confidence to address the curriculum and consequently fall further behind.
According to results from the National Assessment of Educational Progress statistics in 2015, 64% of 4th grade students were reading below proficiency standards. Struggling readers tend to put so much effort into decoding and trying to discern the meaning of the text, they often find great difficulty in more advanced reading and thinking skills. Students who are not at grade level by the end of 3rd grade often miss out on content and concepts due to poor reading skills.
Several studies point to the importance of elementary grade level reading skills and their connection to later school success. Despite the interventions in place, 2/3 of all 4th grade students fail to score proficient in their reading skills. To help assure future success in elementary and secondary education, students need to be at grade level in reading by the end of 3rd grade.
Students fail to succeed in reading for a variety of reasons. Children with poor reading comprehension often have associated word reading and phonological skill weakness. To fully comprehend a reading passage, students must first be able to decode the words. Once students have decoded the words, they must be able to hold the knowledge of their working memory in order to process it effectively. If students fail to complete any of these steps adequately and fluently, they will struggle in determining the meaning of the text. I am doing this seriously.
Numerous studies have pointed to the positive outcomes from using reading intervention programs with struggling and at-risk students.
That was still my slide, you know. Go ahead. This is your slide.
The purpose of our study is to determine the effectiveness of implementing a computer-based intervention for at-risk 3rd grade students. The study focused on a concentrated and stable period of time in addition to the regular school curriculum and delivered after normal school hours. The goal is to help students become fluent readers and meet grade level criteria for the end of the year benchmark as evidenced by the DIBELS composite scores. Extra reading support for at-risk students in grade 3 may provide the impetus to push those students up to grade level for their reading proficiency.
Common Core State Standards.
Yeah.
Are we going to read this one? Okay. With the adoption of Common Core, yes, do we have a question from the audience? No? I thought we had a question.
I just thought that was very cool how you scoop down onto that next screen there.
This is Melissa's. She's very good at creating presents. With the adoption of Common Core State Standards in 2010, students are required to comprehend grade level text that is both fiction and nonfiction. Common Core State Standards also include instruction that is more rigorous and requires higher level thinking skills. Higher level thinking skills can be difficult, if not impossible, for students if they are trying to decode words or understand difficult vocabulary. When a student is able to read a text fluently, they can better comprehend the material.
Our intervention used Lexia Reading Core 5. It was chosen because it's adapted to each student's ability level. It's paced with the student's rate of learning. They receive prompt and appropriate feedback for scaffolding. When needed, students were given explicit instruction by either Lexia, and if that didn't help, by one of myself or Lori. The desired outcomes included the acceleration of reading skill development in all at-risk students to help them meet grade level expectations, catch up with their peers, better comprehend grade level tasks, and show more engagement during reading lessons.
Our research questions are as follows. The primary research question: What effect will implementing an after-school technology-based intervention focused on reading skills have on the reading achievement of at-risk third grade students? Our secondary research question: what influence will participation in an after-school technology-based intervention have on the motivation and engagement of at-risk third grade students in the area of language arts? These are the definition of our terms, and you can refer to your handouts to look at the definition of terms.
The research questions are also in the handouts.
Oh, yeah, the research questions are in the handouts too.
Yeah.
The next several slides cover relevant literature, and we're only going to cover the bolded points to make it a little bit
Time effective?
Yes. But we can send you the slides with everything else. So reading is not merely a single skill. It's comprised of 5 major components, including phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Sousa in 2011 stated that 20 to 30% of children reading will be the most cognitive difficult task they'll ever tackle in their lives. He also suggested that half of children can make the shift from spoken language to reading, while the other half have more difficulty.
Establishment of reading supports. Reading ability has substantial influence in people's lives because it is associated with graduation rate, poverty, and future economic stability. 1 in 6 students who are in 3rd grade will not graduate on time if they are not reading at grade level. During the last 2 decades, there has been minimal growth in correcting poor reading levels in the elementary grades.
Concern over poor reading scores in American youth led Congress to commission a panel in 1997 that charged with the task of reviewing and evaluating research effectiveness of different programs that taught children to read.
The National Reading Panel. The NRP found that students need a combination of approaches and techniques to build their reading skills. Excellent reading instruction needs to include explicit instruction in phonemic awareness, systematic phonics instruction, a process to improve fluency, and a system to increase comprehension. The panel further found that instruction needed to include a combination of techniques that teach children to read: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, guided oral reading, and vocabulary.
And comprehension.
Oh, it's down below there.
Yeah. The elements of reading include phonological awareness that requires children to analyze the sounds of language and are an essential foundation for mastering phonics skills. They have to master the sound-symbol relationship and phonic word attack strategies for reading success. Students from low-income homes enter kindergarten between 12 and 14 months behind the national average in language and pre-reading skills, and a student's ability to read and comprehend material is dependent upon their overall verbal ability.
Causes of reading failure. Sousa noted that there are 7 possible linguistic causes of reading difficulty and 5 possible non-linguistic causes of reading difficulties. The linguistic causes include phonological deficits, differences in auditory and visual processing speeds, structural differences in the brain, lesions on the left part of the brain, trouble retaining phonemes in the head, word blindness. The non-linguistic causes of reading difficulties described by Sousa include attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, unable to discriminate sequential sounds, difficulty with sound frequency discrimination, inability to detect target sounds and noise, and processing deficits in the cerebellum. Boy, I wish I had somebody here to read the next slide.
Our study covered several special populations. The students who are minorities from low-income households are frequently identified as at risk for academic failure because of poverty, cultural and language diversity, education level of family members, and other environmental factors. 83% of 4th grade students from low-income families were not proficient in reading, compared to 55% of students from moderate to high-income households.
Learning disabled and students with speech difficulties. I believe I'm a student with speech difficulties as we speak. 90% of students with learning disabilities also have substantial problems with literacy. Students who, dang it, who have severe speech and language deficits will need more daily intensive instruction to gain successful reading skills. Gotcha. Students who have identified disabilities and severe reading difficulties made significant gains in word reading and reading comprehension when given intensive one-on-one instruction.
Our English language learners, 7% of 4th and 3% of 8th grade English learners score at or above proficiency on reading assessments. Conversely, 38% of 4th and 37% of 8th grade native English speakers scored at or above proficiency.
Are you going to talk about small group intervention?
Small group intervention provided to EL students gives them an additional opportunity to hear, speak, and read English.
There's a need for intervention. I'm going to pay for this later. Feister stated that students who were poor readers before 4th continued to be poor readers through high school. Students with reading difficulties make progress when each is given additional intensive, efficient instruction and increased opportunities to practice with and without teacher support. Results have shown that students who received reading interventions have higher year-end scores on multiple measures than those receiving regular curriculum alone.
For intervention, numerous studies have pointed to the need for preventing reading difficulties before they become much more challenging to resolve. School staff can implement interventions in the early stages of reading difficulty, but fewer students would require more costly services later if they implemented them earlier. Studies that followed students after placement in special education failed to demonstrate any significant advancement in either word recognition or reading comprehension skills.
Response to intervention. Since the implementation of Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act in 2009, school districts have been encouraged to adopt response to intervention, or RTI, as a tiered pyramid framework for providing increasing intensive interventions in a timely manner for at-risk students.
So sorry, continue.
Go. It's okay. The special needs of a student is indeed important, but without a tiered system of quality supports, the child would be in danger of becoming part of the forgotten 10%. All students participated in Tier 1 strategies. 25% of students who required more help to attain grade level expectations received interventions in the second tier. Interventions in Tier 2 need to be intensive enough that students experiencing reading difficulties can catch up or move faster than students not involved in the strategy. And this is important later on in this slide presentation. So remember that statement. Students who demonstrated an extreme need received interventions in Tier 3, which includes several of those interventions in Tier 2, but with more frequent application and longer duration. Evidence suggests that it's possible to prevent reading problems for most children when interventions are instituted early and with sufficient intensity. Take it away, Tevin.
Okay, for reading recovery, interventions such as reading recovery have a long history of success in providing early intervention support for a multitude of students diagnosed early as having reading difficulties. 75% of students who completed the full course of reading recovery met grade level benchmarks in reading and writing. However, 25% students in the same program failed to make the adequate progress. Continuing interventions are necessary to reach those students who leave first grade still at risk for reading failure.
Why do I get the longer slides? Computer-assisted instruction is appropriate for providing supplemental instruction in reading because the activities are motivating, give prompt feedback, and positive reinforcement. Computers allow children to work at their own pace to gain extensive practice and in their areas of need. Computer-assisted instruction can be adapted to each student's ability with the individual learning rates. Computer-assisted instruction activities are constructed to branch automatically based on the performance of the students' review as needed and advance to more difficult tasks when easier ones are mastered. CAI does not rely on parent knowledge of reading strategies or development when the program is implemented at home. And CAI can be used successfully in the classroom with students who have severe reading difficulties. CI does lack some human interaction, which can have an adverse impact on the learning of some students.
One thing we looked at was motivation and engagement. For the intervention to be successful, the teacher needs to maintain the attention and focus of the students during the lesson. Maintaining engagement and motivation could often be difficult for struggling students. Students with learning difficulties often become disengaged and spend less time engaged in learning than their peers do. The teachers will have the most engaged students in a reading lesson if the lesson is taught in explicit, intense, focused, and cohesive manner. CAI produces attractive graphics, prompt feedback, and positive reinforcement to keep motivation. And another benefit is that students have the capability of controlling their own learning through choice, which can be motivating for some students.
When should intervention begin? Hernandez declared that interventions that began after third grade are unlikely to be as effective as those implemented in the early years. 4% of proficient readers failed to graduate. 16% who were not proficient readers by third grade did not graduate. Among high school dropouts, 63% were among those who scored within the lowest category in reading. There is some disagreement as to when to begin interventions for kindergarten students. Some teachers in kindergarten felt that it was better to focus on readiness skills the first half of the year and only begin intensive support for struggling students in the second half of the year. Generally, research suggests that the earlier the interventions can be implemented for struggling readers, the better the result for all involved.
The amount of time for interventions, when thinking about time management, it is important to recognize the time and resources that are available to the teacher. RTI Tier 2 receives appropriate small group interventions for at least 30 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week to be successful. Tier 3 interventions for 3 days a week for 20 minutes was enough to get half the students to reach benchmark goals for their DIBELS. Significant gains were made when students were given 30 to 40 minutes in small group sessions 3 days a week, and students with severe reading difficulties can make significant gains in a one-on-one setting. Students who are below grade level need to have an increased rate of learning so they can catch up to their normally developing peers.
It's amazing. Group size. There is no significant differences between intervention groups that have only one person or a small group. Outcomes are improved with smaller groups of 1 to 3 students.
Using larger groups of 10 students shows only a slight difference from those in smaller groups. Smaller groups can be effectively used for interventions, instruction, especially for students who are at risk or those with learning disabilities. Smaller group size is more important for students who are learning foundation reading skills or who have severe reading difficulties than those without.
Thank you for that. Setting. The intervention took place in a school in Southern California, located in the suburb of San Bernardino County. The school served 800 students from kindergarten through 6th grade. The school population was 62% Hispanic, 29% white, 6% African American, 3% Asian American or Pacific Islander. 10% of the students were English language learners or had recently been redesignated. 37% of the students were eligible for free lunch and were identified as low socioeconomic status. The school's academic performance index score was 842 in 2013, which placed the school above the state standard.
Our participants for the study were third grade students who did not meet their DIBELS composite score for the middle of the year. They either scored in the strategic or intensive range, so somewhere between 0 and 284 points. We had 13 boys and 3 girls who participated in the study. 31% were Hispanic, 63% were Caucasian, 6% were Asian. Of that, 19% were English language learners, 6% participated in special education programs, 6% received speech services, and 12% were gate identified.
The intervention plan. Oh, this is bolded, have you noticed?
Yeah.
4-week after school intervention program was created. Students used technology-based reading intervention program called Lexia Reading Core 5. Oh, there it is. Lexia Reading Core 5 was an adaptive program that was individualized for each student. Students worked individually on computers and received individual instruction. When necessary, Researcher 2 That's me, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, provided additional support to students. Lexia Reading Core 5 also provided the one-on-one support to all students, included those that were receiving special education services. The DIBELS assessments were administered in late January. Oh, we're moving on.
For the intervention, each week the class was conducted on Tuesday and Thursday for 45 minutes. They first logged on, they saw their student dashboard, which you can see here. The dashboard showed their weekly usage, goals, and how many units they achieved for the week. After viewing the dashboard, they had a choice of 2 warm-up activities, and then they had to choose from one of their topics, which could be from phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, structural analysis, vocabulary, or comprehension.
And this is what their dashboard looked like. Ta-da!
Welcome.
Data collection methods. This is my area of expertise. This triangulation of data included DIBELS. DIBELS was used for both baseline data collection and summative assessments. Parent surveys. I've got really good at those. The parent survey measured parent perceptions of their children's reading skills, their struggles with reading, computer skills, and motivation. Lexia Reading Core 5 reports, reflection journals. The journals were used to record any changes, take notes on students who needed extra reminders to stay on task, take notes on students who showed or lacked motivation, and also note those students who received additional support per Lexia Reading Core 5 recommendations. These forms of data collection were used to answer our research question.
We also made sure we used ethical research practices and guidelines. They were established to make sure participants were protected from harm or deception. They agreed to participate and were aware of the parameters. Confidentiality of all the participants was protected, so everything was numbered. And this included things during, before, and after the end of the study.
Ethical research practices, including ethical guidelines for academic research, were established to ensure that participants were protected. Didn't we just do this? Yeah, that's the same thing, isn't it? Okay. Plan to increase validity. The researchers employed 3 different methods of validity throughout the study: catalytic validity, applicability, transferability validity, and truth value validity. Moving on.
For confidentiality and informed consent, the participants agreed to participate, as did their parents. We asked permission from the school administrator. The surveys were provided to the parents were anonymous. No names were written on the surveys. All data was kept confidential. And prior to the implementation of the study, we gained permission from both the school we attend and the school we work at.
Findings and discussion. Participants were given DIBELS assessment to determine who qualified for the intervention. Data was collected before after the implementation of this intervention. Parents were asked to complete a set of pre- and post surveys. Both parents' intervention surveys were completed completely anonymous. Averages from all 16 surveys were calculated on a quantitative survey questions. These include: do you feel that your child is making adequate progress in reading skills? And does your child like to read? You can see that pre-intervention, the average score was 3. Post-intervention, it was 3.6 on if you feel that your child is making adequate progress in reading skills. So the parents obviously felt their children were making better progress as per the intervention. The other question, the blue shows the pre-intervention question: does your child like to read? The average score was 2.6 from the group of 16 participants. The score of the post-intervention survey average increased to 3.5 from the initial score of 2.6. So the parents felt that their children liked to read better after the intervention.
The 16 third grade students who qualified agreed to participate under the guidelines of the intervention were part of an after-school program for 4 weeks, not including a 2-week spring break. So they did 2 weeks of intervention, 2 weeks of spring break, and 2 weeks of intervention. At the conclusion of the intervention, the students were given a Dibbles assessment to determine if any progress had occurred and any acquisition of new reading skills had happened.
Here's a graph of the results. It shows 11 of the 16 participants made measurable progress. 5 of the students either failed to make progress or regressed. The expected growth in Dibble scores during this time period is approximately 36 points. As stated, for interventions to be successful, they need to be intensive enough so that students experiencing reading difficulties can catch up or move faster than students not involved in the intervention. 9 of the 11 participants who made progress surpassed this expected growth. 2 participants with an improvement of more than 100 points made more than a year's worth of growth. 4 participants with the score gains between 47 and 60 points accomplished growth of 50% more than expected. 3 other participants were able to demonstrate growth, but not at a rate sufficient to move faster than their peers who were not participating in the intervention. Of the 16 participants involved in the intervention, 1 did not make any progress and 4 regressed from their Dibbles composite scores posted in mid-January. This graph kind of shows... I was going to wait to this. The 2 students who made exceptional progress, the 4 students who made good progress, some modest progress by 3 of the students, and then the percentage of students who made either no growth was 1 student and 4 that regressed.
4 of the 5 participants that did not demonstrate progress were absent from the intervention at least 1 of the intervention days. Another possible cause for lack of progress was the interruption to the intervention scheduled by the 2-week spring break. It is possible that these students were not able to maintain any growth that they may have attained across an extended break in the intervention.
Are there any questions? If you don't have any questions, please be aware that all of our references are in the handouts.
The charts are also in the handout.
The charts are also in the handouts. So if you wish to look at this later.
Okay.
Or you can look at it now.
And we can send you the link to the Prezi.
And you can watch it at your leisure.
Any questions?
No, I'm good.
Anybody else?
The room is silent. They don't want to be heard.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.